My generation was the first to have television. The generation before mine had radio. We both had movies, of course, but my generation was the first to see movies on television. And those movies were, for the most part, made two or even three generations before mine. So before I ever went to a movie theater, my first movie star heroes were only seen on television. And they were from generations past, and their days were, for the most part, over. But I didn't know that. First, there was Paul Muni. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang was the first movie I had ever seen that opened my eyes to the injustices of the world. It wouldn't be the last. Next, there was Robert Dunant. For me, this actor combined masculinity and scholarship, and that's a graceful combination. And then there was Douglas Fairbanks Jr. He was my first swashbuckling hero, and he would soon be overtaken by Burt Lancaster. But in those very early days, Doug held sway. He didn't have his famous father's athletic prowess, but as a girlfriend of mine once remarked, he prances nice. Indeed he does. So, is The Exile my favorite movie of all time? No. But it was the first time I had ever seen a movie stunt that had taken my breath away. And we'll get to that. But first, our story. In the year of our Lord, 1660, there dwelt in this house Britain's wandering young king, Charles Stuart, exiled by the Roundheads of the tyrant Cromwell, neglected by all, save a few cavaliers, forgotten by all, save his people. We first meet the exiled king, Charles Stuart, in an open-air market somewhere in the Netherlands where he is hiding out from the Roundheads. And right away, we are aware of the theatricality of the set design, which extends throughout the movie. Stuart bluffs and charms his way past the Roundheads at the market, and he and an aide quickly return to where he and his loyal followers are hiding out. It's a deserted building of some sort, and despite its many levels, it has an underground, almost subterranean feel. Once there, Stuart and the loyal Sir Edward Hyde, played with avuncular comfort by Nigel Bruce, decipher a message from England indicating that the time might be right for Stuart's return. But Stuart doesn't think so. And it's clear that the Roundheads are closing in, and it's decided that he must find a new hiding place. The hiding place turns out to be the farm of Katja, a pretty florist he met earlier at the market. Katie, as she is called, is played by French actress Rita Corday, and she also runs the local inn as well as the flower farm. Katie is a clear-eyed businesswoman and at times a bit of a scold, but she soon succumbs to Stuart's charms, and when it comes to laying on the charm, Fairbanks swings for the rafters. He seems to be enjoying himself immensely as he plays the gallant cavalier, and that enjoyment extends to us. Some of this, no doubt, comes from trying to emulate his father, as he so clearly does in this movie. But in real life, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. was a war hero and a devoted Anglophile, and it must be said he wears it well. And that's what this film is really about. It's about celebrity, about being a star. Charles Stuart, the exiled king, is a star, and despite his impoverished circumstances, comports himself as one. A king must do what a king must do. But while Doug Jr. is the star of the film, Maria Montez gets top billing due to a clause in her contract. And Doug, ever the gentleman, gives it to her even if she's only in the film briefly. Her salary so affected the budget that the original plan to shoot the film in color was scrapped, but director Max Ophuls, newly arrived in Hollywood, was up to the task despite the studio's initial misgivings. He favors long takes with elaborate dolly and tracking shots. Despite its lack of color, it is the most visually interesting of all the costume epics that Fairbanks produced. Robert Coote is on hand, playing an out-of-work actor impersonating Charles Stuart for bread and board. Although cowardly and gluttonous, he redeems himself in the end by helping Charles escape. And finally, we have Henry Daniell as Colonel Ingram, the chief Roundhead hunting for Stuart with orders from Cromwell to assassinate him. The third act is comprised of two action sequences. The first takes place at the inn, where the Roundheads have finally run Stewart to ground. Here, Fairbanks swings and dodges and generally prances about, all to good effect. The action continues as Stewart escapes to a nearby windmill with the Roundheads hot on his trail. And it's here that we come to the stunt that took my breath away as a child. Trapped on the upper floor, Stewart runs and leaps onto the mill's ascending blade. The Roundheads follow, and a sword fight breaks out on the windmill's revolving blades. All great stuff, but it was that initial leap that took my breath away. I couldn't sleep that night as I kept replaying that scene in my head. The film climaxes with a sword fight between Stewart and Ingram, but it's almost a parody of such sword fights, interspersed as it is, with highfalutin dialogue and devilish grins. The film is based on the novel His Majesty the King by Cosmo Hamilton. Cosmo? But there's no guff about historic accuracy. It's about legend and the celebrity of historic figures. And in that regard, I highly recommend His Picture in the Papers. Written by the late film critic Richard Schickel, this book examines the beginnings of modern celebrity culture through the lives of America's first movie stars, Mary Pickford, Charles Chaplin, and in particular, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. It's a thin volume and a fun read. See you around the campus.